What's going on, world? DS1 Ross, and I'm back. Shout out to everybody, man. Shout out to everybody who support me and who support this platform, Sheep Stay Sleep TV. Very much appreciated. Much love. Before I start this show, like the stream, share the stream. Like the stream and share the stream. Tonight, this is the third installment of Black History Month series for 2020. You can go to the playlist section, Black History Month 2020, and you can check out the first two installments. I appreciate all the love and the support. Also, if you would like to donate, simply donate through the super chat. If you have a question or a statement you want me to read, or you can easily hit the Cash App, $ Sheep Stay Sleep TV, one word, $ Sheep Stay Sleep TV, one word. Much love to y'all, man. Also, go and check out the Deacons of Defense. I did a stream on them earlier today. Y'all can go and check that out. I go ahead and I put that up for y'all so y'all can go check out the Deacons of Defense. It's Black History Month. We need to learn our history. This is not the only time that we should be reading and learning our history, but I understand that for the most part, most of our people do what society tells them to do. So this is why I put this out every year during Black History Month. So I appreciate y'all. Much love. And tonight, we're going to get into the life of George Jackson. We're going to get into the life of George Jackson. Who was George Jackson and why did he make the list? And before I get into his life and what went on, I want to first start out and say every Black History Month series, I make it my duty to put what society will call a rebel in my list. I make sure I do this. I do it purposefully. And I do it because of, for one, all of the propaganda surrounding rebels and people who basically fought for freedom. People who were deemed to be, gangsters and street cats. And, I make sure I add those guys in because they play a prevalent role in a lot of our history, especially dealing in grassroots consciousness, grassroots movements. So I definitely want to bring y'all George Jackson, man. Powerful brother, man. Powerful brother. Shout out to brother Rob. I see you, bro. See you in the building, man. So let's get into the life of George Jackson. George Jackson was born in Chicago, Illinois. He was the second son of Lester and Georgia Bea Jackson's 5 children. He spent time in California Youth Authority Corrections Facility and Paso Robles due to several juvenile convictions, including armed robbery, assault, and burglary. In 1961, he was convicted of armed robbery, stealing $70 at gunpoint from a gas station, and sentenced to 1 year to life in prison. During his first years at San Quentin State Prison, Jackson became involved in revolutionary activity. Now, pay attention to that. Because They love to throw that on brothers who go into these prisons and actually link up with other brothers and just begin to show solidarity in the prisons. They like to call it a revolutionary activity. They also did this with the Angola 3. Go and check that out. I spoke on them last year in the Black History Month series of 2019. Go and check them out, the Angola 3. He was described by prison officials as egocentric and antisocial. In 1966, Jackson met and befriended W.L. Nolan, who introduced him to Marxist and Maoist ideology. The two founded the Black Guerrilla Family, BGF, in 1966, based on Marxist and Maoist political thought. In speaking of his ideological transformation, Jackson remarked, "I met Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, Engels, and Mao when I entered prison, and they redeemed me." So let's get into a little bit of the BGF, the Black Guerrilla Family. The Black Guerrilla Family, or BGF, also known as Black Family or the Black Vanguards, is an African American prison and street gang founded in 1966 by George Jackson and W.L. Nolan while they were incarcerated at San Quentin Prison. Inspired by Marcus Garvey, the BGF was characterized as an ideological African American Marxist Leninist revolutionary organization composed of prisoners. It was founded with the stated goals of promoting Black supremacy, maintaining dignity in prison, and overthrowing the U.S. government. Now you know that's bullshit. You know they got a gaslight, and they have to do that. You know that was complete bullshit. They didn't talk about overthrowing no government. And please stop. You know that's some bullshit. They was promoting Black supremacy. Bullshit. And just in case y'all didn't know, the BGF, you know, they basically was with the Panthers. So I just wanted to give y'all a little background on the BGF. As Jackson's disciplinary infractions grew, he spent more time in solitary confinement. Now, if you notice, a lot of these brothers that they call revolutionary, or they belong to an organization, or they just show solidarity amongst Black men in prisons, they're always subjected to solitary confinement. If you go and you watch the story of the UBN, the United Blood Nation in New York, and how it started on Rikers Island, in prison. These brothers spent years upon years in solitary confinement. A couple of those brothers are home, the ones that are still alive, and they have YouTube channels, and I watch them. And I watch these guys speak on the things that they've been through in prison. How sometimes they wouldn't feed them. How they were beaten and assaulted by correction officers. And this stuff was allowed. This is how you got the East Coast Bloods. This is how you got them. This is not coming from my mouth. This is coming from one of the founding fathers. He said this himself. This is why to the Bloods on the East Coast, blood stands for brotherly love, overriding oppression and destruction. Because when they were in prison, they unified under the fact that they shedded blood with each other. They ate with each other. They fought with each other. They bled together. They cried together. That's what created that brotherly love. And it came out of oppression because these brothers were being oppressed in the prison system. This is how the BGF was created. Out of oppression in the prison system. See, I understand this. See, they'll sit here and just make it seem like, you know, George Jackson and Nolan just came up with this idea because these guys were just radicals. No, this came out of oppression. It came out of oppression. Just like a lot of our organizations that are now labeled as gangs came out of oppression. But they'll tell you, oh, these guys came up with this because they read books from Karl Marx, from Lenin, from Mao Zedong, and they came up with this from that. No, they didn't. It came out of oppression. And they used that literature to empower themselves. But they're going to just deem it as, oh, these guys were, you know, it's always about making black men look like monsters and predators and terrorists and people who just are here to destroy. They always made us look like that. So imagine going through that in the streets, but it's different behind the walls. And see, this is what these older brothers that I listened to, they was building upon. That's why it's specifically, the acronym is specifically brotherly love overriding oppression and destruction. Because their love and their bond was created out of oppression and people trying to destroy them. So it says, as Jackson's disciplinary infractions grew, he spent more time in solitary confinement, where he studied political economy and radical theory. There go that word again, radical. Anything that goes against what society tells you to do, you're going to be deemed a radical. Whenever you figure out that all this shit that you were taught in your life was a lie, and that they use those lies to keep you enslaved, you become a radical. you become a radical. Whenever you get into politics and you start breaking down what this system is really about, you become a radical. So of course they're gonna say that he was studying radical theory. Of course they're gonna say that. They have to say that. Because whatever they plan to do, they have to look justified. They have to have some form of justification for doing it. So they'll call you a radical. They'll call you a gang. He also wrote many letters to friends and supporters, which will later be edited and compiled into books. Soledad Brother and Blood in My Eye. Bestsellers that brought him a great deal of attention from leftist organizers and intellectuals in the US and Western Europe. Jackson's political transformation was seen as insincere by prison officials. Of course. Of course. Of course. They did the same thing with Tookie Williams. Even though he won a Nobel Peace Prize, Arnold didn't care about that. Arnold didn't care about the books Tookie was writing. He didn't care. Still killed him. Jackson's political transformation was seen as insincere by prison officials, with San Quentin associate Warden commenting that Jackson was a sociopath, a very personable hoodlum who did not give a shit about the revolution. See that? Didn't I just say that? They'll just minimize you into being a corner kid, a street hustler, a low-level gangster. This is what they've always done to us. Always. And notice, we just was talking about yesterday on the second installment, we just spoke on the fact of how they tried to discredit Paul Robeson. He was never in prison. He wasn't a street guy. He was from academia. And what did they do to him? They tried to discredit him. They did it to Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumpler. They did the same thing to her. Why? Why? Notice, it's the same issue. Whether you quote unquote in the street or whether you in academia. Jackson's political transformation was seen as insincere by prison officials, with San Quentin associate warden commenting that Jackson was a sociopath, a very personable hoodlum who did not give a shit about the revolution. He amassed a following of inmates, including some whites and Hispanics, but most enthusiastically with other black inmates. In January 1969, Jackson and Nolan was transferred from San Quentin to Soledad Prison. On January 13th, 1970, Nolan and two other black inmates, Cleveland Edwards and Alvin Miller, were shot to death by correction officer OPG Miller during a yard riot with members of the Aryan Brotherhood. Now, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that because, see, I draw the parallel between things to make things make sense. If you ever watched Oz, the Aryan Brotherhood, the guys that were down with the Aryan Brotherhood, they always carried out duties of the correction officers and the warden. They always did dirt. Them and the Hispanics. They showed that in Oz. But the Aryan Brotherhood definitely worked close with the prison guards, with the warden. So, and I'm not saying that it exactly went this way, but I'm almost for certain that they set that prison riot up to kill those brothers. They set that prison riot up to kill those brothers, man. Just go back and watch Oz and see who was down with the Aryan Brotherhood and the things that they used to do and the things they used to get away with and why they got away with it. See, it's politics and everything, especially when you're dealing with institutions. See, people forget that the prison system is an institution. And when you're dealing with institutions, you're dealing with politics. On January 13th, 1970, Nolan and two other black inmates, Cleveland Edwards and Alvin Miller, were shot to death by correction officer Opie G. Miller during a yard riot with members of the Aryan Brotherhood. Following Nolan's death, Jackson became increasingly confrontational with correction officers and spoke often about the need to protect fellow inmates and take revenge on correction officers for Nolan's death and what Jackson referred to as a selective retaliatory violence. See, George Jackson believed that the shit was a setup too. And see, one of the brothers that started the UBN, the United Blood Nation, the East Coast Bloods, that's what they had to do when they were in prison. He said the same thing. They had to start to retaliate on the correction officers because the correction officers were getting away with murdering prisoners. So what's going on in Mississippi right now, that been going on. That been going on, man. And it's sad that it's still going on to this day. But that been going on, man. And brothers had to band together to survive. The brothers that give these kind of horror stories, these are the founding fathers of the East Coast Bloods. These were the founding fathers. These were the brothers who created the original sets of the East Coast Bloods. And they said that they read George Jackson. They had dudes who they was bidding with who were vanguards. And they had to do this to survive. It wasn't about retaliation. They were at war. These brothers said that They will wake up every day and sometimes they don't even know if they're going to make it to the next day because it was that hostile. On January 17th, 1970, Jackson, Fleeta Drumgo, and John Clutchett were charged with murdering a correction officer, John V. Mills, who was beaten and thrown from the third floor of Soledad's Y Wing. This was a capital offense and a successful conviction, but put Jackson in the gas chamber. Mills was purportedly killed in a retaliation for the shooting deaths of the 3 inmates by Miller the previous year. Miller was not convicted of any crime, a grand jury ruling his actions to be justifiable homicide. Look how long we've been hearing that. It was justifiable. Now, if any of y'all ever been to jury duty, you know that all of that shit is contrived. It's not really based on nothing real. If they want a conviction, they're gonna make sure they put certain jurors up there who agree with it. How do I know this? Because when I went to jury duty, I was one of the people who didn't agree. And guess what they told me? Sir, have a nice day. You're done for today. Go outside, go to the counter, the lady will sign your ticket, and you done for the day. Have that ever happened to any of y'all when y'all went to jury duty? Instead of just sitting there, I've actually been in the room and, I went through the process to a certain extent. Shout out to everybody in the building, man. Shout out to Kels, I see you. Oh, Reliable, salute. Partly Cloudy, salute, my brother. Shout out to Tone Malone in the building. Like and share the stream, y'all. Like and share the stream, man. There's the donation links right there. Also, $ Cash App. Cash App $ Sheep Stay Sleep TV if you would like to donate. I appreciate y'all tuning in, man. But yeah, like I was saying, so it's easy for them to get that kind of decision. Because if you're one of the people that's going against what everybody else is saying, you're not going to make it to the jury. You're not going to be able to sit in the courtroom and do none of that. So of course, he got away with it. Of course he did. So now let's get into a little bit later on in his life. Because by the way, if y'all didn't know, George Jackson was only 29 when he got killed. He didn't even make it to his 30th birthday. He was born in 1941. He died at 71 for his birthday. Man was 29 years old, man. On August 21st, 1971, Jackson met with attorney Stephen Bingham on a civil lawsuit Jackson had filed against California Department of Corrections. This is another thing that's not being spoken about. and it's not really talked about in a lot of different states, but a lot of these prisons have a lot of lawsuits filed against them, mainly by prisoners and by ex-prisoners' families. But see, we never hear about these things. But this is nothing new. You understand? Brothers been filing because they were trying to get justice for what was going on. These guys were being murdered. Do you know how many black men were murdered in the prison system, man? That you never hear about. One of my uncles died in jail. He wasn't murdered, but he died in jail. And the brothers, when I listen to the brothers, the founding fathers of the UBN, they talk about how, back then, man, on Rikers Island, man, it was crazy. Being up north in them prisons in Attica and all of that in the 90s was crazy, man. It wasn't just dudes, it wasn't just violence amongst the prisoners. COs was catching bodies. One of the wardens at that time on Rikers Island, he actually was sending hits, paying other prisoners to hit other prisoners. This is not a conspiracy. This is real life. These brothers are talking about it on YouTube. A couple of these brothers got channels and they spoke on it. This is not a conspiracy. This is really what's going on. And there was a lot of brothers who created organizations behind the wall, which spilled out in the streets, into the streets, because brothers wrote books. See, once you write a piece of literature and it's published, you live forever. You live forever, man. Intellectual property doesn't die. This is why in the music business, owning your publishing or owning a large percent of your publishing is important. Because that is how you receive residuals for your intellectual property, which is your thoughts. And this is why Thinking Black Men has always been on the terrorist list. Back then they didn't call them terrorists. See, when you were Thinking Black Man, you're going to always be a threat. Always. When you don't follow what they're telling you to follow, when you don't go and be what somebody's telling you to be, when you have a purpose outside of laying up with women, getting drunk, getting fly, when your mind surpasses that, you become a threat, not only to the people that surround you, but you become a threat to the system. And then when you have the ability to gather people, that makes you even more of a threat. That's when they start calling you a revolutionary. Because you're able to gather people under your ideology. When you can gather people who has been experiencing the same things. That's how you arise to power. Why do you think they had to get the organizational leaders off the streets? Why do you think they came up with all these laws, the RICO law, gang indictments, all it? Why do you think they came up with these things? It is to make black men afraid to even unify. It made black men afraid of brotherhood. The only brotherhood you could be a part of is if you go to a goddamn university and join under these Greek letters and follow their protocols and their guidelines. You can't come up with your own shit. Because if you do that, you overstepping your boundaries because you playing with power. So the way that they neutralize it and able to control the way that they want it to go, they lock up all the leaders. And this is what you have today. And this is why you can call it a gang. This is why you can call the Bloods a gang, the Crips a gang, the GDs a gang, the BDs a gang. This is why you can do this. Because they neutralized the epicenter of power, which is the leaders. And they got power because of what? They were able to unify under an ideology, which is based on what? Knowledge. Knowledge. These were highly intelligent brothers. These wasn't no idiots. See, they always try to make these black men who were able to do these things, like the brother Raymond Washington. They made sure on the internet they scrubbed all the information about Raymond. So we could only talk about Tookie. But see, Raymond was the brain behind the Crips, not Tookie. But they don't talk about Raymond Washington. They took him out the game early. See, they don't talk about the genius of these brothers. They don't talk about the political acumen that the brother Larry Hoover has. They don't talk about his intelligence. And how at one point, one of his sons was running for I think either the mayor or the governor of Chicago. And I watched the interview with Lil Larry. He said what influenced him to go into politics was his father. He said because from the time he could read, his father was sending books home from prison. Books on activism, politics, leadership, community reform. He said his father was sending them books from prison. He wasn't going to no bookstore. He wasn't going to no library. His father was sending him these books from prison. Larry Hoover's son, one of his sons, one of his youngest sons. If I'm not mistaken, I think his name is Tyree. I'm not sure. Don't charge me on the name. Yes, sir, the mayor of Chicago. Yes, sir. But see, they always want to make it look like we just was dumb criminals who created gangs. These weren't gangs. The government call it gangs. These were organizations. See, why do they call what we created gangs, but call the Italians and the French and the Irish and all the shit that they created, they call that organized crime? Why do they deem the mafia organized crime? But call the Bloods a gang, call the GDs a gang, call the BDs a gang, call the Crips a gang, call the Latin Kings a gang. But y'all will say the goddamn Bonanno family is organized crime. Y'all will say John Gotti was a organized crime boss. But call Larry Hoover a gang leader. But call Raymond Washington a street gangster. But you call Dutch Schultz a crime boss. On August 21st, 1971, Jackson met with attorney Stephen Bingham on a civil lawsuit Jackson had filed against the California Department of Corrections. After the meeting, Jackson was escorted by Officer Urbano Rabasio back to his cell when Rabasio noticed a metallic object in Jackson's hair, later revealed to be a wig, and ordered him to remove it. Jackson then pulled a Spanish Astra 9mm pistol from beneath the wig and said, "Gentlemen, the dragon has come." It is not clear how Jackson obtained the gun. Bingham, who lived for 13 years as a fugitive before returning to the United States to face trial, was acquitted of charges that he smuggled a gun to Jackson. Jackson ordered Rabasio to open all the cells, and along with several other inmates, he overpowered the remaining correction officers and took them, along with 2 inmates, hostage. If you go, I'm gonna tell y'all these brothers' channel. Just go on YouTube, type in Killer Kev. Type in Killer Kev. Type in Wildcat with a K. Cat with a K. Type in Cross TV Network. That's the brother Mel Cross. He was one of the founding. If you ever heard of the hats in New York, the brims, that's Mel Cross. He was one of the big homies of the brims. These brothers told similar stories that they had to do this. They had to do this, man. Now I see where they got the idea from. See why I say you'll never die? If you have published work, you'll never die. You'll live forever. Five other hostages, officers Jerry Graham, Frank DeLeon, and Paul Krasnus, along with 2 white prisoners, were killed and found in Jackson's cell. 3 other officers, Rabasio, Kenneth McCrae, and Charles Breckenridge, were also shot and stabbed, but survived. After finding the keys for the adjustment sentence exit, Jackson, along with fellow inmate and close friend Johnny Spain, escaped to the yard where Jackson was shot dead from a tower and Spain surrendered. Jackson was killed just 3 days prior to the start of his murder trial for the 1970 killing of John Mills. 3 inmates were acquitted and 3 were convicted for the murders. The 6 became known as the San Quentin Six. There is some evidence that Jackson and his supporters on the outside had planned to escape for several weeks. 3 days before the escape attempt, Jackson rewrote his will, leaving all royalties as well as control of his legal defense fund to the Black Panther Party. What a goddamn genius. Jackson's funeral was held at St. Augustine's Episcopal Church in Oakland, California on August 28, 1971. And isn't that where the Black Panthers were born? In Oakland? The Black Panther Party was created in Oakland, California. You see why they never wanted us to be united? Because if y'all do y'all proper history, and there's a lot of brothers speaking about it on YouTube, older brothers, a lot of some of the original beef that was started between the Bloods and the Crips, it was ignited by the police. Because the police will lock you up. Say you from Inglewood, they'll lock you up and drive your ass all the way to Compton and drop you off in a Crip neighborhood so you could get killed. Then they'll turn around, go to Compton, drop your ass off somewhere else in a Blood neighborhood so they could kill you. And then the war begins. The cops were doing that. Police. Police departments. LAPD. One of the most crooked police syndicates in the world. Just like the NYPD. This is nothing new. Because it was all stopping the rise of Black men to power. We cannot allow these men to get power. You already had some of the young Chicago rappers talking about it in interviews. How they'll walk outside and go through what they call gangways, but are like alleys, and find crates of machine guns. They was dropping guns off in Chicago. But you got people up here still trying to talk about the violence in Chicago. That shit is political. That shit come from the higher ups. And some of the brothers talked about it. You come outside, walk outside, it's a crate full of guns out of nowhere. These is facts, man. This stuff, this has been going on for a long time. Because they wanted to stop brothers from uniting. They always wanted to destroy the Black brotherhood. Either you unite with us or y'all gonna stay separated. See? And when brothers begin to unite and show solidarity and you start to see things change, that is a revolutionary act. This is why you have brothers who are afraid to unify, because they are afraid that they're going to die. And a lot of you brothers who are on YouTube and y'all talk this for my people shit. If y'all not ready to die about it, don't talk about it. Okay? If you ain't ready to die about it, don't talk about it. Because that's what's going to happen. If brothers really come together and start doing shit. And we're not talking about, we're not talking about causing anybody harm. What do y'all think would happen if all the black men that are in hip hop was to unify? Master P, Dame Dash, Jay-Z, Diddy, 50 Cent. What if all of them was to come together? Russell, all of them. We don't need y'all no more. We could create our own distribution company. We're going to do this ourselves. You know how many people will start getting pulled up on indictments? You'll start seeing indictments coming out of nowhere. Dudes will be brought up on charges. You like, yo, what the? When did he do that? You will see just charges coming out of nowhere. You think Jay-Z just left Dame Dash alone because of Dame's attitude? No. He was influenced by guys like Leor. You know, the guys that Dame be calling out. Those guys are around Jay. And they was telling him, if you want to go to the next level, you got to leave your man. You got to leave Dame alone. Why? Because Dame pushes independence. Dame teaches we can make just amount of money if we stick together. We don't got to deal with these people. These people need us. We don't need them. But see, when you talking like that, that's an act of rebellion. This is why Dame has been blackballed from the industry. He's been blackballed. Yeah, he still make money and all that, but he's been blackballed. What do you think happened to Master P? He got blackballed. They've been trying to blackball Jay Prince for years. Because these men preach independence. We don't need these people. If we were about us and stick together, just us, we can make it. They don't want to hear that shit. You can't be talking that. See? So the beginnings of the Black Panther Party, some of their ideologies they got from George Jackson, the BGF, the Black Guerrilla Family. They were together. You still got BGF members today. So shout out to George Jackson and the BGF. Can't say the Black Panthers without saying BGF. See? So stop letting these people deem your freedom fighters menial gangsters, menial street thugs. Because these men were fighting for freedom. They were fighting for justice. They were fighting for humanity. They wanted to be treated as human. So shout out to y'all that's in the building. I'm going to come to the chat real quick. You would like to donate, hit the Streamlabs links. It's in the chat room. Also, Cash App $Sheep Stay Sleep TV. Cash App $Sheep Stay Sleep TV, man. We give some shout outs. Shout out to my brother Rob. Shout out to Mr. Sutton. Shout out to the grinder, JT. Salute my big brother Sonny in the building. Tone Malone in the building. Salute. Shout out to Chocolate in the building. Shout out to my brother Ronan. Shout out to Kels in the building. Old Reliable. Salute. Denmark Rebellion VC. Salute. Partly Cloudy. Salute. Shout out to Grinch. See you in the building, man. Shout out to the Masculine Mercenaries. BJ, salute, bro. James Kills, salute. Shout out to my brother Kenneth in the building. I see you, Gab. Respect. Oh, definitely, brother Rob. Definitely. That's a fact. That is a fact. But that's how you see. That's why, I don't pay a lot of these people. I don't take these people serious who speak like that, man. Because it just shows how uninformed they are at the end of the day. It shows the lack of understanding, and the fact that they can't make sense out of what they reading. Well, I didn't know that, James. He said, plus George stepped to the Mexican mafia to try to unify the head leader. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because in the prisons at a certain period of time, man, everybody of color were being oppressed. Everybody. Everybody who were melanated were under oppression. They were being oppressed. That's facts, Tone. Threat equals intent plus means to organize. Facts. Tyrone Church, salute, man. But I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Much love to y'all. Before I go, hit the Cash App up. Cash App $Sheep Stay Sleep TV. Cash App Sheep Stay Sleep TV, man. This has been the third installment of the Black History Month series of 2020. Make sure y'all go to the playlist section. Check out installments 1 and 2. And we will be back again with the 4th installment. I appreciate all the love and the support, man. This is DS1 Ross representing Sheep Stay Sleep TV. And I'm going to catch y'all on the next one. Peace.